All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Bus stop where day she's there, I say, please share my umbrella. Bus stop, bus goes, she stays, love grows under my umbrella. All that summer we enjoyed it, wind and rain and shine. That umbrella we employed it, by August she was mine. Every morning I would see her waiting at the...
Welcome back, everyone. This is hour 2 of tonight's show. My name is Rob McConnell, and you're listening to the X Zone Radio Show from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. Listen, everybody knows that the devil made me do it. Remember that from Laughing? Or, you know, when something goes wrong, it had to be the work of the devil because we humans, well, we can't do anything wrong, right? Our question tonight is, what are demons? What is demonology? And what is the ancient concept from a modern perspective on the anatomy of a demon? Joining me now from Colorado is Gwilda Wiyaka. She is a radio TV creator, producer, host, journalist, and award-winning author. Singer-songwriter, she is also a shamanic practitioner, instructor, and the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Art School, formerly a Colorado State Certified Occupational School of the Shamanic Arts, for which she authored all the curriculum and text. She creates online videos, galactic shamanism classes to promote personal empowerment and conducts workshops and seminars internationally. Joining me now from Coaldale, Colorado is Gwilda Wiyaka. And Gwilda, welcome back to the show. Nice having you with us tonight.
Thank you, Rob. It's always so nice to be here.
Let me see. Demons. Everybody knows about them, you know, like, especially when we're talking about the paranormal, the exorcist, the dark side. What have you found in your research that would try and make sense of demons? But let me just ask you a very simple question up front. Are demons real?
Yes.
Why are they allowed to exist in a world where we strive for peace, harmony, and good, and try to sing Kumbaya with everybody we can?
Well, I think understanding what they are helps to answer that question. Demons are an archetypal form, actually, that represent an imbalance of frequency, whether it's on the demonic side or the luciferic side. They're extreme imbalances, and the archetype of the devil or demons stand for that.
So would this be part of my theory that we live in a binary existence, zeros and one? So if you have good, you have to have evil. And is this where the balance comes?
Yes, absolutely. It's just like the acid's base scale. If you get something too acid, it's going to burn you, right? On the other hand, if you get something too base, it's going to burn you just as equally as bad as the acid would. And so there's a line in the middle. Mm-hmm. With water, of course, it's about 7. But for us, let's just arbitrarily say the line is 0. And as long as we're right around that 0 place, we're in balance and healthy, and on all levels: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. If we're going to expand, which is a lot of what's going on right now, we need to expand +1 and -1, +2 and -2. But if we start going one direction and not the other, instead of expansion, you have polarization, and that's when you start getting into the demonic or luciferic realms.
So how do you describe a demon?
Well, it depends on which tradition I'm coming from, okay?
Okay.
And in the ancient traditions, they were described just like the metaphor would show them, as these scary things that need to be chased away. And the shaman would champion their client and chase this thing away. And it worked, okay, because the ceremonies worked. And then engaging the client's imagination, and this guy's going to save me, he's going to get rid of this thing.
Right.
But basically, the ceremonies were designed around bringing back balance, not chasing out demons or spirits. It's not an evil spirit. It's just that a person has become susceptible to being imbalanced.
All right. As you know, Gwilda, germs have the ability to adapt. We've seen this with COVID, where the new strains evolve from the older strains, right? Getting stronger and smarter as we go along, making it harder for us to fight off the disease or the germ. How come throughout the centuries, demons haven't had the common sense to evolve so that certain rituals just don't work on them anymore?
Well, I think that's attributing way too much thought process and personality to the concept. The demonic behavior or demonic possession is when a person is susceptible to entering into such a deep state of imbalance that they start acting that imbalance out in their environment. But it's not like something's plotting to jump on and something's plotting to evolve or whatever. It's much more practical than that, much more, I don't want to say scientific, but it's just kind of, there's nothing personal about it. It's just an imbalance in frequencies.
All right, if it's an imbalance in frequencies that affect a person to believe that they're under a demonic spell or that they're possessed by a demon, would this then be classified as a psychosis?
It certainly results in one. And, to everything, a psychosis can be tracked back to a physical level, which would be a chemical imbalance in the brain. It can be tracked to an emotional level, which would be, the upheaval of the emotions. When you talk to psychologists about that, right? It can be tracked to a mental level where the person isn't thinking logically anymore. But it also can be tracked to a spiritual level. And the spiritual level is where the concept of demons come in. It's where the treatment or the exorcisms come in. But again, it's an imbalance in frequencies, and a person can become increasingly susceptible if they polarize.
So if I understand right, casting out a demon or exorcising a demon is in fact casting out your own psychosis or the psychosis of the person who is quote unquote possessed.
Well, not exactly casting that out, but rather, again, if you have acid and base and you're working with a fish tank, say, for instance, and the water's too acid, you add some base to bring it back to zero. It's like that, and that's how it's treated, actually. The ceremonies and the rituals that are used to treat demonic possession, so to speak, actually shift frequency. They shift from, if it's too negative, they add positive. If it's too positive, they add negative. But it's a ritual, and people can perform this ritual and not understand the energetic side of it. It works. It just flat works. You get in a car, you turn it on, it drives. You don't know what goes on in the engine, okay?
But you do
it's
know,
the same thing with ceremony.
But you do know, Gwilda, that if you don't turn the key, the car's not going to go. You know that if you don't maintain the engine properly, it's going to fail. You do know that if there's not enough air in the tire, you're going to go flat. You do know that if you don't put enough fuel in the vehicle, it won't run. So I see a big difference here.
I think we're kind of we're arguing semantics in a way. I'm saying that the rituals work if they're performed exactly correctly, depending on which tradition you're following. even if the person is coming from an indigenous tribe and doesn't think in the form of positive and negative.
Okay.
That's still what's being treated.
If demons are the result of an imbalance in frequency, am I right so far?
So far. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then why are there different ceremonies? Would not there be the same ceremony for everybody?
I'm sorry. No, there's different ceremonies because shamanism started at the base of a lot of different societies, and different ceremonies align better with different tribes or different nationalities than others. So it's what helps the person understand, okay, that this is being treated. So they're going to have they have similar elements to them, but they do differ from society to society and from age to age.
But if it's just readjusting frequency, why can't it be done one way all across the world?
Because the one thing about shamanism is it requires the participation of the client or patient. And so it has to appeal to or be understandable to whatever culture this person is from. And so each culture developed their ceremonies around their belief systems, and like the Catholics do it one way and the Lakota do it another, but it still works.
All right, so is evil and demons different around the world as well?
Yes, they are, in that the archetypal metaphors may differ. Okay, each culture has a different archetype for them, and you'll see those pictures and drawings and this and that. They're all a little different, but they've been around forever. Yeah.
How do we know that evil is real and it's just not something that has been used as a control factor or a fear factor?
Well, we don't, and I fear tends to polarize people, okay? And our modern day society is designed around polarizing people against each other. Even in the United States, even Democrat, Republican, all over the place, there's these polar opposites. And if a person goes way far one way or way far the other, they lose balance, they lose logic, they lose continuity, and they lose integrity. And I don't mean moral integrity, I just mean spiritual integrity.
All right, so I'm just trying to figure this out, because if it was just a matter of frequency, like you say it is, and I'm not saying it isn't, I'm just trying to understand how, for example, a Catholic priest doing the rites of exorcism is actually changing a frequency by reading versions from the Bible or praying. How does that adjust frequency?
Well, that is one of the rituals that does adjust frequency, and it's because the priest believes very strongly in what he's doing and what he's saying, and the person that he's working on engages with that too. And so then that automatically raises the frequency of the priest, it raises the frequency of the environment, and it raises the frequency of the client. There's a frequency, balance point, whereby the demonic behavior is no longer present because the imbalance isn't there.
All right, stand by, Gwilda. We have to take our first break. And Exonation, this is the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. Gwilda's website is findyourpathhome.com, and we'll be back on the other side of this break. Talking about the devil, demons, and much more. Don't go away.
And she would show me what she'd won. All the people stared as if we were both quite insane.
Welcome back to Classic 1220. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone, and our guest this hour is Gwilda Wiyaka, www.findyourpathhome.com. Gwilda, during the commercial break, I was trying to understand how the frequency works, and if you have somebody who is possessed, right?
Mm-hmm.
How would they get unbalanced? You know, if they're convinced that they're possessed by a demon or Lucifer, the devil, or an archetype, whatever, how did that person get in such a state that his balance is so off kilter that he actually believes he's possessed?
There's a lot of ways that can happen. It can be from repeated trauma. Okay, it can be from trauma handed down through family lines. It can be from, being in an environment where like I said, there's a lot of polarization. A cult will put a person, because they really, tend to, there's a whole bunch of agreement, but it's very polarized. Okay, so there's as many ways as it can happen as you can shake a stick at, and there's also degrees of it as well. You might see someone that, they act normal every day, and then something will trigger them, and then, ooh, who's in there kind of feeling. And we've all experienced that. And yet the person, comes back the next day and they're just normal. And sometimes when people imbibe in too much alcohol or too much drugs, that'll make them more susceptible to becoming extremely imbalanced, whether one way or the other.
Okay, so let's say my producer Craig comes in tomorrow, and he is totally out of character. All right, I mean totally. He throws his headphones around. He breaks a mirror. He just does everything out of character. The next day he comes in, he's back to normal.
Right.
How can we say that was because of something evil?
Well, we don't necessarily. I mean, he might be having a really, really, really bad day. Okay, and all of us have days like that where we're acting out of character.
Exactly, sure.
Something's gone on. Yeah, we all do. But when it is extreme, when a person's voice changes, when their expression, they don't even look like themselves, okay? And if you've experienced it, it's pretty clear. It just makes the hair rise on the back of your neck. It's very, very clear. And the energy of the person is totally different as well.
What causes the change in the facial characteristics, the change in the voice? Some people report foul odors emanating or around the possessed person, temperature change. How can all this be attributed to frequency change or frequency imbalance?
Well, we have to realize that some of what we're experiencing when we smell those smells or see the facial changes and this and that is our personal way of interpreting an extremely imbalanced situation or frequency. So we don't necessarily see energy, but we have ways of interpreting it. We pick up the energy, and then in our imagination or our mind's eye, we interpret it through metaphor. And that's where the whole thing about, the scary demons and all the pictures that they draw and all this stuff has come to be. But it's really just our psyche's way of interpreting that this is not a safe situation. There's an extreme imbalance going on here.
So if it's perceived as such by our psyche, then it is a psychosis.
I don't follow.
Well, if it's all in the person's mind, it's not real, right?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I come from a place of everything is created by our psyche. Everything that we experience, this holographic reality, as some people will call it, it comes from us. It's put out there by our psyche, the way we interpret it, everything. So that's where I come from, and that's why I didn't quite follow your question.
Do you really believe that this is not reality but a holograph?
I believe it's reality, but I believe it's subjective to us.
Give me an example.
Well, I can walk into a room and somebody can be sitting in a corner wearing a red dress, and I think that lady looks really nice in that red dress. And somebody else can walk in the room and look at the lady in the red dress and say, that lady looks really, that's just not good for her. It's not a good look for her at all. Okay. My reality and that other person's reality are very different, even though the stimulus is pretty much the same. My perception of it is going to be based on my history with some lady in a red dress, probably. Okay. As is the other person's. And so we have totally different realities going on with the same stimulus.
All right. So if you're saying that what you're perceiving is a holographic world, and the other lady is, believing or perceiving that her reality is, well, what I consider to be my reality, how can the two realities exist at the same time?
It's all perceptual, isn't it?
Well, perception or reality. For example, I believe that people who, for example, I know I have to pay my bills. I know I have to pay my staff. I know that in order to do certain things here at work, I have to do certain things. I have to make sure that the mixers are working, that it's turned on, the computers are working, and so on. How can that apply to a holographic world, where holographic world or the world of the Matrix is totally different than reality? How can the two exist on the same time at the same time?
Well, there's lots of theories on that, and I'm certainly no expert on it. But there's a lot of theories that there's a lot of realities going on at the same time, a lot of timelines going on at the same time. And the more I work with shamanism, the more it kind of leans me to believe that somehow that's kind of true. I think that our linear perception of reality is fairly limited, and there's a heck of a lot more going on. I personally have experienced enough that seems pretty feasible to me.
You've experienced a lot. Now, was this in what we consider reality or what you consider to be the holographic existence?
Well, they're really both the same to me.
But this was my question. How can they both exist at the same time if one is real and the other is a holograph?
Well, I don't see the way I'm using holograph, I don't necessarily mean it's not real. Everybody's reality is real to them, and it's their way of interpreting the stimulus that's coming to them from the world. But within that, they can vary a lot.
Is it possible that holograph is the wrong word?
It might not be the best.
So what other word would you use so that our listeners can try and get a better grasp on what we're talking about?
Okay, take me back to where we started, and I'll try.
You're the one who brought up the holograph, not me.
Right, but it came from one of your questions. That's what I was trying to track back to. Is where do we start, so I can come up with a better idea.
I was saying that is a demonic possession in a person's mind, or is it real?
Gotcha. And I was trying to express that both are true.
So they're coexisting on the same plane and in the same universe at the same time and in the same space.
Yes.
Okay, so how can they do that?
I don't know. This is I'm not sure I even understand the question.
The question is, how can reality exist at the same time in a universe that is holographic?
But I thought we were going to get away from holographic.
Well, what other word do you want to use, Gwilda?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm
Okay.
not sure which one to use.
So let me ask you this question. Let's use holograph because we've been using it now for a little while. Changing the frequency, is it done in what we consider our reality, the real world that I consider we're in, or does it exist in the holographic world? Because if I understand, you can't have a frequency in a holographic world.
The frequency, if we're talking about, when we're talking about demons or imbalanced frequencies and that sort of thing, exists in this ordinary reality.
Okay.
But it is not visible okay, necessarily.
Right.
It's a frequency, and we don't necessarily perceive those. Some people do, and we do perceive them to a certain degree and interpret them. And that interpretation is the metaphors that we've been working with.
Gotcha. Going back in history, have you discovered any lineage linking demons throughout families and throughout, and for example, the demon of San Juan has been with so many generations of one family?
Yes, that's traditionally called family line demons.
Okay.
And there is a genetic predisposition to being imbalanced, to have to be more susceptible to taking on polarization or imbalanced frequencies. And it can be passed down through the genetics, or it can be passed down through abuse. I mean, if you're around one of these people that's expressing this as a child, it's definitely going to make an impression and set you up for the same. It doesn't matter if it's whether it's demonic possession or just an abusive parent, then you grow up to be an abusive parent. It's the same kind of thing. The impact of being around that sort of thing can have its effect, and probably, it's passed down through the genetics.
So are you saying that abuse by a parent or even a spouse is actually something demonic?
No, but I'm saying it can make a person susceptible to the imbalance that can lead to demonic, possession.
Okay. Help me try and understand that, because I've lost it on that one.
Remember when we were talking about what are the precursors to being susceptible to this imbalanced frequency?
Right.
And I said it can be alcohol, it can be drugs, it can be abuse, it can be, emotional damage growing up. Any of those things that throw us off balance can put us in a position to be more susceptible to polarizing and becoming imbalanced.
So in the case of an alcoholic, or somebody who gets smashed and they're under the influence of alcohol and or a drug, once this causes the imbalance, but once they sober up, they balance out themselves?
Yeah, when you're under the influence of a drug, it drops your frequency and you become more susceptible to going into a state of imbalance. And you've noticed, again, this is where it all crosses over, and it's a matter of degree, but you've noticed probably some people can drink alcohol and maybe they get jolly and this and that, and they're, but others drink alcohol and they almost like have a personality change.
All right, stand by. We've got to take our break here. X Zone Nation, Gwilda Wiyaka is our guest, findyourpathhome.com. And this is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. until midnight. On your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed at classic1220.ca. Don't go away.
I gave you all I have to give. Why did it have to stop? You've blown it all sky high.
Don't wanna take it anymore. I'll just stay here locked behind the door. Just no time to stop and get away. 'Cause I work so hard to make it every day.
And welcome back to Classic 1220 and the X Zone Radio Show that is also streamed on classic1220.ca. Gwilda Wiyaka is our special guest. www.findyourpathhome.com. All right, I'm just going to go back a little bit. If a frequency imbalance causes people to open themselves up to demonic possession, I guess, for for a better word. Has there been an increase in demonic situations that you're aware of as the cell towers have crisscrossed Canada and the United States? My reason for asking is that cell towers emit microwave frequencies. That's how the cell phones work. Would these frequencies not act as frequencies to upset the normal frequencies that make people kind of on an even keel?
I think there's a lot, Rob, that plays into this, and I think that the situations that we're living in right now has more of them than in times past, actually. So we have a lot of things going on. We have our food has been messed with, and the fact that, in order to feed the masses, we've gone to GMOs, we've done this, we've done that. We put preservatives in, we chemicalize them. Well, all those things compromise balance, okay? The cell towers, they and the 5G and all that stuff, it's a compromise. There's not, I don't think, any one thing that is causing it so much as it's the whole collection of things. And then when you add to that parenting, in a lot of instances, both parents having to work and this and that, there's not the support at home sometimes that's needed. There's too much stress going on that causes imbalances. So we've got all sorts of things that are creating imbalances, and people are kind of responding accordingly. Just because a person has their frequency compromised doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go clear into a possession. That's
right.
That's rare, more rare.
So why is it some people go from one extreme to the others, and others people just kind of work it out, shake it off, and the next day everything's okay?
That's a really good question, Rob, because I'm sure a lot of us would like to know that one, psychologists included. But I think it's a mixed bag. I think you're looking at what were we genetically predisposed to, what's our ancestral history, because what we come with, the package we come with, is a whole mixture of what our DNA brought, of what our environment brought, of what our nurturing or lack thereof brought. So it's a real mixed bag, and I think that's why we have trouble with mental illness or spiritual illness as well, is because there's so much involved in it.
Okay, so is there a universal cure for all this, or is each case individually looked at and treated upon?
Yeah, the latter, I would have to say. They're universal principles that apply. If we're talking about dealing with a spiritual illness of demonic possession, and that's considered a spiritual illness in the shamanic circles. So there's a way that you can get into each individual's what's going to work for them, but rather than it being a canned thing that you learn out of books, the shaman actually goes in and has what they consider to be spirit guides to show them what to do in each instance. So it's very, very customized to the individual. But again, the shaman is going to be working, or used to be working, from their principles, from their culture that agrees best with their people, that makes the most sense to their people. And now we have, we're trying to resurrect people, or some people are trying to resurrect into our culture the shamanic principles to treat this sort of thing, but we're such a mixed bag, we don't have specific tried and true for, I'm not just Irish, I'm a mixed bag, as many of us are. And so what's going to work best for this person? Well, what the shaman does is they go into a journey trance and find that information and then move on that.
So are you saying that everybody has a different frequency?
Oh, even an individual has a different frequency from moment to moment. But yes, there's everybody has a predisposition to more balance or less balance, or what's needed to correct the imbalance, that sort of thing.
So how does a shaman know what to do?
The traditional way is to go into a journey trance. It's an altered state of consciousness that's measurable, by the way, scientifically measurable, and get the information from what they call their spirit guides. But really, spirit guides are also a metaphorical representation. What they're actually doing is their field is interacting with the field of the client, and the information is coming from there. So they're sensing where the imbalances are. They get a metaphor that represents that, and then they act on that.
So how do we explain with some cases of demonic possession that the agent or the person who is affected by the possession, has strange and unusual abilities, increased strength, the ability to talk different languages, the levitation of furniture and so on and so forth. How do we explain that?
That's a tough one. I mean, it kind of gets into the area of poltergeist and that sort of thing.
Well, poltergeist is, in my opinion, totally different from an exorcism. Poltergeist is caused by psi, right? Kinetic, moving things. A person is doing that on their own. So how do we add poltergeist into a demonic possession?
Well, the same principles that cause levitation in the case of the poltergeist are at work in demonic possession. So, at least the way I was taught, what happens when a person goes into this complete state of imbalance, and there's oftentimes rage and all that stuff going on, that those extreme emotions, much like, and they've linked some poltergeist behavior activity with always a pubescent adolescent being present, okay? So that it's believed that it's coming from the person, but it's, an extra sense perception, and as well as an extra sensory ability, not sensory, but an extra ability that isn't direct. You don't go over there and pick it up. You're picking it up spiritually somehow.
Right.
And I can't explain that. I've seen it, but I can't explain it.
How does holy water work? How to buy, I know this, that I've spoken to a number of exorcists on this show. They say that the holy water is used in casting out the demon. They say that showing the demon the crucifix is also a tool. They talk about the reading of certain biblical content also works as an agent to rid the poor person suffering from, the demon is cast out. How does that work if this is all frequency? Is what these people are using, the holy water, the crucifix, and the Bible, all ways of equalizing that frequency?
Exactly. And there's, in the case of water is a major universal solvent and that sort of thing. And it'll take on information, it'll take on charge just like a crystal does. And so there's this very lovely ancient ritual that's used to create the holy water in the first place. And so it's holding a balanced charge. Okay, so it's the ritual that they use to create holy water creates this beautiful balance, and that's what's being used, is bringing back balance through that. The biblical readings, all of those things bring a higher frequency and a tendency towards balance. These are all tools, but who's really doing the work is the practitioner. They're using their tools to hold a center of balance to start to correct the situation that's going on with their client.
Does the client have to be in front of the practitioner for it to work?
No, but it's probably better because, when you're looking at demonic possession, this is a pretty intense spiritual illness. It's very, very intense. One of the most intense, I think, that's out there. And so having the person physically present is going to be more impactful, the practitioner physically present with the client. But say extraction, which is a minor form, everything works in degrees. So extraction is where you have imbalance that causes localized pain or illness. They're called negative inundations, and extraction is the shamanic technique used to correct those. Those can be done at a distance pretty easily. But when you start getting more and more and more and more imbalanced, really working in the whole space, using, different herbs, using the holy water, if that's your belief, using, really working with the environment that person's in to bring balance to the environment, okay? And to do that, the practitioner really needs to be present.
So, how do we explain if this is just a matter of frequency, and it kind of makes sense, how do we explain that when a person is possessed, or even people who are not possessed claim to see demonic entities? How do we explain that?
That's what I was talking about earlier, or trying to, is because we sense these energies and then we interpret them metaphorically to make sense to the mind. Some people are, one, much more sensitive to energies than others, and two, are very good at picking up the universal archetypes that go with the energy, okay? And they'll literally, as far as they can tell, they're literally seeing it. I can see things out of the side of my eyes when someone is crossed that's in my family, say, for instance, or somebody I've been close to for a while. I'll see them walking by out of the side of my eye. But when I turn and I look, they're not there. Well, I'm picking up the residual energy that person left in my field, probably. But that's the way I'm interpreting it, is as if they're walking by. Are they really? No, probably not.
Something like wishing.
I wouldn't necessarily call it wishing. What you're doing is you're picking up a frequency. So it's like an echo.
Okay.
If someone has been in my space, okay, for like a beloved pet, say, for instance, that you kind of attune to each other. You create a resonance, and even though the creature has left the physical body, that resonance remains for a while, and I'll pick it up, and I interpret that. My psyche interprets that as I'm seeing them, but I'm not visually seeing them.
Could it also be perceived as grief?
Yes, it could be.
Okay. Stand by, Gwilda. We've got to take our final break. Exonation, Gwilda Wiyaka is our special guest. And if you'd like to find out more about this young lady, her books, her music, her courses, she's got a great website, www.findyourpathhome.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this short break as we wrap up tonight here in the X Zone, because we're only on from 10 p.m. until midnight, Monday through Friday, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and stream classic1220.ca. Demons. The devil. Real? The manifestation of the human mind? Or just fantasy at its best? We'll be back. Don't go away.
There's no money falling from the sky, 'cause a man took my heart and robbed me blind.
Hello and welcome to the Mental Health Hotline. If you are obsessive compulsive, press 1 repeatedly. If you are codependent, ask someone to press 2 for you. If you have multiple personalities, press 3, 4, 5, and 6. If you are paranoid, we know what you are and what you want. Stay on the line and we'll trace your call. If you're delusional, press 7 and your call will be transferred to the mothership. If you are schizophrenic, listen carefully and a small voice will tell you which number to press. If you are depressive, it doesn't matter which number you press, no one will answer you. If you are dyslexic, press 69696969. If you have a nervous disorder, please fidget with the hash key until the beep. After the beep, please wait for the beep. If you have a short-term memory loss, please try your call again later. And if you have low self-esteem, hang up. All our operators are too busy to talk to you.
And I just can't wait till the day when you knock
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I'm coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streaming on classic1220.ca. Our guest this hour, Gwilda Wiyaka, www.findyourpathhome.com. I guess my last question on this topic, Gwilda, before we get on to something else, is when speaking of depossession or exorcism, you say better the devil you know than the one you don't want. And what do you mean by that?
I love that term. Well, in shamanic circles, or not just shamanic circles, but people, there's all sorts of people that do depossessions. And if the person has been susceptible to possession in the first place, in other words, susceptible to having their frequency go into extreme imbalance,
Right.
creating personality disorder and all sorts of things, that susceptibility remains unless you do some healing work around it. So very often when somebody comes to me, I mean, you get rid of the demon, they feel better for a while, then they come back. You get rid of it, they can feel, hey, it just, pays my light bill, right? But if you really want to help somebody, you need to heal the imbalance within the person that's creating the vulnerability to start out with, or it's just going to be a revolving door. Okay?
Why do you have to pay a light bill when you live in a holographic world?
Well, actually, I live off grid, so I don't have to pay a light bill anyway.
Sorry, I couldn't help that one. The devil made me do it.
I know it.
And by the way, do you know what happens if you don't pay the exorcist?
No.
You get repossessed.
Ooh, you're good tonight.
That's what she said. Okay, so yeah, so basically, to sum up the past nearly hour, all we need to do is keep ourselves balanced, our frequencies balanced, and we don't have to worry about devils, demons, or dark shadows.
Exactly, but that's a little more difficult than it sounds, because all of us have had our bumps and bruises and have our triggers and this and that. And so it's really an inside job. And one of the things that's been neglected in our culture for a lot of years, because we haven't believed in it, is, taking care of our spiritual well-being. And I don't mean religious, I just mean our frequency well-being and health. And if we can do our inner work, okay, that raises our frequency, brings us to a more balanced place. There's a lot of practices that we can do, whether it's meditation or whatever, brings you back into balance. And if you can hold that balance, you're also holding a higher frequency in your home, so it's not as susceptible. Okay, so it's really, like I said, an inside job, but it's very worthwhile.
Frequency at home, it sounds like feng shui.
That's another thing. Yeah, absolutely. That's what feng shui works with.
Where do you see shamanism in the future, Gwilda?
Well, it depends on how far we go down the road. Shamanism was designed and is designed to help people access spiritual information or energetic information. Different ages are of higher frequency, and we're just coming out of some lower frequency ages whereby people need an intermediary, I can't say the right word, but anyway, a go-between. And that's what the shaman was designed to do. These people that are more gifted that way, with a genetic predisposition to being able to work with energy, doing a lot of ritual, could access that unified field or access the information that the tribe needed. As we move into this chaotic time that we're moving into, because we're switching from one frequency format to another because of the changing of ages, then we have an opportunity to use shamanism again to help us heal, to help us align, to help us find that place of balance. But what I'm seeing, and anxiously looking forward to, though I'll probably not be around when it happens, is we'll soon move into a time when the frequency is high enough overall that the average person can make that access rather than having to rely on a go-between. And then the shamanism will become obsolete for a while until we move into the darker ages again.
I know what my frequency is.
I'm hearing it as a plug. I hear it coming.
1220. There you go. Classic 1220. That's my frequency. When we look at, for example, children today, a lot of ADHD. Is this a frequency imbalance?
Well, everything expresses according to frequency. So there is a frequency imbalance component to ADHD. There's also a diet component. There's also an energetic, component, like you're saying, the cell towers. All of that could be, causing or adding to the ADHD. But it certainly is, epidemic proportions right now.
Now, you're off the grid where you live in Colorado. And you've sent me pictures, and it is truly beautiful. Truly beautiful. You have animals that come up to your back door, and thank you so much for sharing the beautiful scenery with me. My question is, people who live off the grid and in the areas like where you live, are they less likely to have frequency imbalance?
If they're doing their inner work, this kind of an environment really supports that. It supports being less susceptible. And quite frankly, I live alone up here so I can do my work. And I'm not having to field the imbalances that you are exposed to when you're around a whole bunch of people and a whole bunch of stuff going on in a bar down the street and this and that. And in alignment with nature automatically carries balance. It's where it comes from. And so I'm constantly being aligned with the way life works in balance by being in it here versus in the middle of a city where people are road raging and this sort of thing. But I could still have a major problem if I didn't do my inside work, and even regardless of where I live.
Tell us about some of the courses that you have coming up, Gwilda, because I'm sure listeners would love to learn how to do that thing you do.
Well, I have a lot of courses online to establish, anybody can learn how to do the journey trance, how to access, get access information to help them make their decisions, to create sacred space to work with this frequency to keep a high frequency environment around you. There's a class called Sacred Space or Sanctuary that teaches you how to do that. It's just simple techniques. So online I have, and you can find them on findyourpathhome.com, there's a lot of classes that I have that can really get a person started and empower them to work on the energy level for themselves. And aside from that, then I do more advanced classes. My next one coming up is probably going to be a Zoom class, and it'll probably be about the spring equinox, because that's a really powerful time. So we'd like to work there and do some medicine wheel work at that time.
Is a shaman the same thing as a Wiccan?
Well, the Wiccan are, no, they can be. I'm sure Wiccans can be shaman, but Wiccan is very like shamanism, is earth-based,
right.
And that's why they seem to be one and the same. But the practices can differ quite a bit.
How about rituals? What are some of the rituals that a shaman takes part in or leads?
Oh boy, there's more than you can shake a
Really?
stick at. Yeah. The classic rituals that a priest would do or a preacher would do or a minister would do of marriages, funerals, this sort of thing. Okay, all of those they take care of. If the Celts take care, and the Native Americans as well, and the original Canadians work with the seasons. They celebrate or do ritual on the seasons around the things that the seasons support. So like in the spring, it would be a time of planting, and they do ritual around there that what do you want to plant, for your life? What do you want to intend for your life for this next cycle? That sort of thing. All of that's done. And in addition, all these healing rituals that we've been talking about that can correct spiritual imbalance and spiritual illness is also part of what a shaman does.
I've known you, I know that you've written many books, and in your books, do you teach people about the topics you and I have discussed over the years?
Yes, I sure do.
And
Yes, there's one book that's it brings it into the modern sort of, kind of dovetails it back into the modern way of thinking, and that's So We're Still Here Now What? Spiritual Evolution and Personal Power in a New Era. So that brings this more of the scientific aspects of it, so it's more understandable to the Western mind.
And how about your music business? You've written some beautiful songs. You've got some CDs. Anything new happening there?
No, I've been pretty wrapped up in doing what I'm doing and haven't. And I moved away from where my group was, and we've all kind of split. We still get along, but we've gone off to do other things. So the group is not together anymore. But I still, hear songs and write them down. One of these days, maybe I'll start recording again.
So, what's in the future for Gwilda Wiyaka?
Well, my main thing that is important to me that I've kind of dedicated my life to is to bringing these principles to help people of today so that we can evolve into tomorrow. And I think that it's an alchemical time in our history to do just that. The old ways are dying, they aren't working, and if we can all come from a balanced place, we can create a beautiful tomorrow. And if we don't, well, it's pretty scary. So whatever I can contribute to that, that's what's next for me.
Tell our listeners about your radio show.
Oh, that's one of my favorite. It's called Mission Evolution, and you can find the episodes TV as well as radio at missionevolution.org. And I get to interview these people on the leading edge of all this, whether it's doctors, scientists, esoteric people, shaman, great thinkers of our time, and people that are really looking on the leading edge of what's new, what's their field that can help support evolution, and that's what the program's about.
Sounds great. Gwilda, as always, whenever I speak with you, time goes by so fast. But quickly, give out a couple of websites to our listeners so they don't forget.
You bet. You can always find everything I do or a link to it on findyourpathhome.com. The radio station is missionevolution.org. I do teachings, and there you can find those TV vignettes of teachings that I do at stairwaytoheavenmedia.com.
Gwilda Wiyaka, take care of yourself, and the very best to you and yours in this new year that's coming up, 2024.
Thank you, Rob.
That's it for tonight, Exo Nation. I'll be back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. until midnight right here on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. So until tomorrow night, my friends, always keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night, everyone.